Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. Your support means the world to us and helps others discover stories that share clarity and inspiration on the path of self-discovery. Thank you so much. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. What is fear? Have you ever felt everything tighten inside, as if the air becomes thicker, thoughts darker, and your heart suddenly starts beating faster? Sometimes for no reason. Sometimes from a shadow that others don't see. Sometimes just from being left alone with yourself. This is fear. But what if I tell you, fear is not your enemy? We begin this book not by conquering fear. We begin with understanding, because what you don't understand will control you, always. Fear is not something external. It's not a demon hiding under the bed. It's an internal signal, a deep-seated mechanism that has evolved over millions of years. It was your salvation long before you began to speak, love, dream. Fear is older than any culture. It is built into us, and in this lies its power and its danger. From a scientific point of view, humans have only two innate fears: the fear of a sudden loud noise, the fear of falling. Everything else is acquired. All other fears are put on us like clothes, suggested, built in, imposed. Some are useful, but most? They are like poisons that we drink drop by drop, thinking it's water. When you fear judgment, it's not instinct, it's a memory. When you fear failure, it's not biology, it's experience, most often someone else's. And the longer you live, the more other people's fears become your own. School, parents, society, media, they instill in you what you should be afraid of: being different, being poor, being rejected, being yourself. Fear begins to control your every choice. And you don't even notice. But here's what's important. Fear is not evil. It's not an enemy. It's not a monster. Fear is an indicator. It's like an alarm signal that says, stop, look, assess. It can be your ally if you learn to hear, not obey. The problem is not fear. The problem is panic, in the loss of control, in how you interpret this signal. Panic is when you no longer control yourself. It's when the inner voice screams, and you can't stop it. But fear can be turned into fuel. It can be directed. It can become your teacher. But for this, you need to learn to ask the right questions. Where does it come from? Is it mine? Does it protect me or limit me? In this first part, we lay the foundation. Fear is not a disease. It is a part of the psyche, and you are not broken. Everything you feel is natural. But if you don't learn to work with it, it will begin to work against you. Chapter 2. The Illusion Within. Imagine a person standing in their room, looking at an empty corner, and starting to talk to an invisible giraffe. They speak to it, gesture, laugh, and scold. What would we think? They have mental health issues, you'd say. And you'd be right. This is one of the symptoms of psychosis, a mental disorder where a person loses touch with reality. But here's the question. Why, if you imagine everything falling apart for you tomorrow, you get fired, loved ones turn away, some misfortune happens? Do you start to get nervous? Become overwhelmed with anxiety? Your heart beats faster, and your breathing becomes erratic? Is this considered normal? You just imagined a negative future that doesn't exist. You conjured it up, and your body reacted in real time, as if it had already happened. In the first case, we call a doctor. In the second, we say, it's just anxiety. It's normal. But isn't this the same loss of boundaries between reality and imagination? Isn't it similar to a form of cognitive disorder, where the mind creates a scenario, and the body obeys it without checking the truth? Your psyche is an ingenious mechanism. It can model reality so that you learn from mistakes before they even happen. But this ability has a dark side. If you don't manage your imagination, it starts to manage you. This is how phobias are born. A phobia is not a fear based on a real threat. It's a fear reinforced through repeated reactions. It's when you've imagined a negative outcome dozens of times, and the brain has started to believe that it's not imagination, but a threat. This is how the brain learns. Like a dog that has been trained to fear a rustling sound because it was always followed by something bad. But often, that rustling was just the wind. Imagination has become your prison. When you're afraid to go to a job interview, not because you're in real danger, but because you've already played out a failure scenario in your mind, you become a prisoner of the imaginary. You don't see reality. You see a fantasy dressed in anxiety. You become an actor in a play you didn't write. And here's the key thought. You are not obligated to obediently and unconditionally believe every thought you have. Neither you nor anyone else can know future events for sure. If someone tells you, you won't succeed, or you're wasting your time, that's just their opinion, nothing more. Not every statement is a fact. Not every anxiety is true. Not every imagination is a premonition. In psychology, this is called catastrophizing, the tendency to imagine the worst-case scenario and react to it as if it has already happened. And it is precisely this that underlies the vast majority of phobias and neurotic fears. So, where is the line between sanity and madness? Maybe it runs exactly there, where you stop checking your thoughts against reality. That sounds scary. But in reality, it's encouraging. Because if your fears are created by imagination, it means you can learn to manage that imagination. You can retame your mind. Chapter 3. The Fear That Saves and the Fear That Destroys. We are all born with fears. They are ancient, primal, honest, and there are only two. The first is the fear of falling. The second is the fear of loud noises. And that's astonishing. You weren't afraid of the dark. You weren't afraid of rejection. You weren't afraid of the stage, of loneliness, of poverty, or of death. You weren't afraid of what people might say. You weren't afraid of making mistakes. All those fears came later. You caught them. Primary fears are hardwired into our survival instinct. To fall means to perish. A loud noise is a danger signal. These reactions are triggered in your body automatically. You don't think, you act. That is instinct. But now, look at what's happening in your life. You're afraid of losing status, money, face. You're afraid to tell the truth because someone might judge you. You're afraid to confess your feelings because you might hear a refusal. You're not afraid of a threat. You're afraid of an opinion. And that's where the poisoning begins. You confuse fear with instinct. You equate internal discomfort with mortal danger. But you're not in the jungle. You're not under fire. You're just sitting at home, unable to press send on a message you've been wanting to write for 3 days. Phobias, complexes, anxiety. These are social fears, instilled in you since childhood. They don't come from instinct, but from upbringing, society, and environment. You're afraid of being judged because you were constantly evaluated. You're afraid of being weak because you were taught to always be strong. You're afraid of standing out because you were praised for good behavior, for obedience. Every time you wanted to express yourself but were met with condemnation, your psyche recorded, dangerous. Every time you made a mistake and were shamed, it learned, don't do that again. This is how new instincts form. But these are false reflexes. Not survival-based, but self-limiting. Locks are placed on your freedom. The first, shame. The second, guilt. The third, fear of not meeting expectations. And now you live as if in a cage, one where the door isn't even locked. You've just grown used to sitting inside. After all, you don't have to be afraid of the stage if you're not afraid of being heard. You don't have to be afraid of loneliness if you don't see it as a flaw. You don't have to be afraid of mistakes if you know you don't have to be perfect. Because fear can be an ally. Or it can become your worst enemy. And you are the one who chooses which it will be. Chapter 4. Imagination, a tool of self-destruction. You possess an incredible gift. You are capable of imagining what isn't there, creating entire worlds in your mind that don't exist. This gift is the foundation of art, science, and culture. It's the engine behind every invention, every novel, every act of creativity. Imagination is the source of creation, something without which we could not exist as a species. But it can also become your inner destroyer. Imagine this. You're walking down the street and suddenly picture getting a phone call with devastating news, and immediately you feel anxious. Your muscles tense, your heart races, your breath shortens. Even though nothing happened, absolutely nothing. You simply imagined it. Now consider this. If someone walked into a room, pointed at an empty corner, and said, "There's a pink giraffe sitting over there. It's talking to me," you'd probably question their mental health, wouldn't you? Well then, in psychiatry, there's a diagnosis: schizophrenia. One of its signs is delusions and hallucinations. A person believes in what isn't real and reacts to it as if it is. But here's the uncomfortable truth. We do the same. We imagine catastrophes, betrayals, failure, rejection, illness, poverty. And we react. We sweat, we tremble, we can't sleep, we worry, we avoid. We live in fear of what doesn't exist. And we don't just believe in imaginary threats. We build our entire lives around them. We take detours. We sabotage relationships. We refuse to try. Not because danger is real, but because imagination says it might be. Our brain doesn't distinguish vivid imagination from reality. You can panic over a scenario you made up. You can spend your life defending yourself from an enemy that never existed. You can fear the dark, not because something is there, but because you put something there. The truth is, many phobias aren't real fears. They're perception errors. You made a mistake and believed it. You believed it and felt it. You felt it and began to avoid it. And now, a part of your life is built not on fact, but fiction. Imagination without awareness is like gasoline in a child's toy kitchen. It can ignite from the tiniest spark, from one thought, one word, one comment. And that's when panic flares up. When fantasy becomes so convincing, it starts a real internal fire. Your task is to learn to separate reality from illusion. Otherwise, you'll spend your life dreaming. But in reality, living in nightmares. Fear can be a warning. But a phobia is a phantom, a ghost that feeds on your belief in it. And until you take back control of your imagination, you won't be fighting life. You'll be fighting your own shadows. Chapter 5. Fear saves. Panic kills. Fear is not the enemy. It is older than civilization, older than morality, older than language. It lived within us when we couldn't yet write, but already knew how to survive. When the shadow of a predator is not just a shadow, but a signal. When a rustle in the bushes is not a sound, but a death sentence. Fear is not weakness. It is an instinctive defense mechanism. A warning. The pulse that quickens when you need to run. The adrenaline that turns you into a machine. The vision that sharpens in the dim light. You are not a coward if you are afraid. You are alive. But panic is something completely different. Panic is a distorted fear that has lost its brakes. It's when the alarm signal gets stuck in a loop. When reason loses control. When breathing becomes erratic and the body stops obeying. When you can neither think nor move, only shrink inward. In this state, a person doesn't save themselves. They destroy themselves. Fear says, "Be careful. It might be dangerous there." Panic screams, "We're all going to die right now." Fear gives a choice. Panic takes it away. Psychologists compare fear to an alarm button that you can press, or you can leave untouched. And panic to a fire alarm system that went off spontaneously, and now you no longer control what's happening. Do you know why rescuers, pilots, and soldiers are trained? Not only because they must be strong, but because they must not panic. They learn to act within fear, not to push it away, but to move with it. That's where the power lies. Fear is energy. It can be turned into fuel. If you're afraid of failure, you can prepare twice as hard. If you're afraid of loss, you can value and cherish. If you're afraid of the dark, you can learn to see the outlines of light in it. But as soon as you allow yourself to sink into panic, you become its slave. And it won't let you go until you fall, until you break, until you freeze. You don't have to fight yourself. You have to learn to distinguish. When fear knocks on your door, ask it, have you come to warn me? Or do you want to control me? And if you recognize the voice of panic, stop. Because it's not you who is afraid anymore. You are being used. Chapter 6. Map of your inner labyrinths. Fear is not just an emotion. It's an entire system built into your brain. Hundreds of neural connections, thousands of associations, millions of memories. All of this works to form your unique fear map. Psychologists call these conditioned responses. When you were a child and someone scared you, you didn't just get frightened. You remembered. You linked it to the circumstances, the smell, the voice, the atmosphere. The brain noted, this is dangerous. And every time something similar happens, it triggers the same reaction. This is how a phobia works. You're not afraid of the situation, but of how it made you feel. And that feeling is ingrained in your body. That's why someone's hands shake when they see a spider. That's why someone freezes before a performance, or suffocates in an elevator, even if they know nothing will happen. Because it's not about logic. It's about the body's memory of fear. But here's what's important. If fear is a learned reaction, then you can relearn it. This is called cognitive behavioral therapy. One of its principles is fear exposure. You return to your fear, slowly, consciously, step by step. First in thoughts, then in safe conditions. It's as if you're dragging your fear into the light to make sure it's not a monster, but just a shadow. Another approach is working with beliefs. After all, behind fear often hides a phrase you once accepted as truth. I can't handle it. I'll be judged. This is dangerous. But you never double-checked. You just accepted it as a rule. And now ask yourself, where did this come from? Is it true, or was it imposed on me? Sometimes this one question changes everything. And there are also body-oriented methods. Because fear is not just a thought. It's muscle tension, constricted breathing, a clenched stomach. Through breathing, stretching, touch, you can regain control. Because when you feel your body again, you return to the present moment. And fear doesn't live in the present. It feeds on anticipation. That's why many therapists teach, don't run away from fear. Look at it. Listen to what it wants to say. Maybe it's trying to protect you, but it's using tools that are too rough. And here's the deeper truth. Fear is often not only a response to danger, but also a call for growth. The more you engage with it, the more you learn about your own boundaries and strengths. Fear, in its rawest form, is a mirror reflecting back your limits and your potential. You see, it's not just a monster hiding in the dark. It's an invitation to step into your full self. Chapter 7. Social Phobias. The Trap of Others' Expectations. There is one fear that slowly, over years, burns out your essence. It doesn't manifest in screams or panic attacks. It's quieter, thinner. It comes when you want to be yourself, but you're afraid. Afraid of seeming strange, ridiculous. Afraid of not being accepted. This is the fear of judgment. And it destroys more powerfully than the fear of death. When you hold back laughter because not everyone jokes like you do. When you remain silent because you think your opinion is inappropriate. When you choose the wrong profession, the wrong clothes, the wrong life, just because it will be normal. Social phobias are poisoned roots in the culture. From childhood, we are told who to be, how to behave, how to look. And if you don't fit in, you're in danger. After all, the rejected one is weak, and weakness means pain. Therefore, you learn to wear a mask. You smooth yourself out to be a convenient person. You stifle your own voice and pass off someone else's as your own. But here's the irony. The more you try to please everyone, the more you lose respect for yourself, and therefore, the less strength you have. And the less strength, the more fear. And so it goes in circles. Among the clients of psychotherapists, the majority have anxiety disorders. And almost always, at the root, lies the fear of being oneself in society. The paradox. We live in an era of freedom of self-expression, and simultaneously, in an era of total internal control. But you were not born someone else's copy. You were born unique. And uniqueness always evokes a reaction. Sometimes delight, sometimes fear in others, sometimes rejection. And that's normal. If you are not understood, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It simply means you are not understood, nothing more. Sometimes someone might say, "You're not normal." But who sets these standards anyway? What does this being normal of yours even mean? Who defines this norm? Society? But didn't society reward all of humanity with a million different phobias and give them names? For example, did you know that there is a phobia of developing a phobia? It's called phobophobia, and I'm not kidding right now. Getting rid of social phobias doesn't mean becoming arrogant. It means becoming honest. First of all, with yourself. Let your knees tremble. Let your voice break. But you speak your truth. You take a step without looking back. You no longer ask permission to be yourself. You don't have to please anyone except yourself. And this, truly, is where your liberation begins. To walk the path of authenticity means to embrace discomfort. It's not about seeking perfection or acceptance. It's about accepting yourself in your rawest form. And in this acceptance, you find your greatest strength. Chapter 8. Liberation. You should know, fear is not a permanent feature of your nature. Fear is not your flinches, your panics, your sweaty palms before a performance. Fear is not what lies in wait for you in the dark. Fear is not something ingrained in you for life. It is an ally and your guidepost. And you are the one who can use it for your benefit. Acquired fears are not your true essence. They are something put on you, like clothes. Yes, sometimes very tight. Sometimes as if grown into the skin. Sometimes you've worn them for so many years that you forget what you look like without them. But clothes are not you. You can take them off. You must take them off. You can shake yourself off, take a deep breath, and step forward to meet your new wardrobe, without phobias, without templates. This is liberation. When you understand, fear is not the enemy. It's just a signal. It says, something important is here. Here is the boundary of your possibilities. It doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to protect you. Just too often, crudely and abruptly. After all, agree, often at the moments of its appearance, there is no time for long introductions. You have to explain briefly and clearly that there is danger. You shouldn't try to defeat fear. Look inside it. Accept it as part of yourself. Behind every fear lies a dream. Behind every phobia hides an opportunity. You're afraid to speak. It means you have a voice. You're afraid to lose. It means you have value. You're afraid to die. It means you crave life. And you're afraid to be seen, because deep down you want to be seen as you are. Raw, real, unfiltered. But you're afraid that if the world saw you, truly saw you, it would turn away. And yet, the only real rejection is self-rejection. When you abandon your truth just to fit in, that's when fear wins. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has not experienced fear is incapable of courage." And it's true. Without fear, there is no courage. Without vulnerability, there is no strength. Fear is the price we pay for the ability to dream for real, to dream of your true self, free, alive. And therefore, right now, take off the fears of others. Reclaim your right to breathe deeply, to be strange, to be loud, to be silent, to be yourself. And stop thinking about what people will say. In reality, they don't care about you. They're too busy hiding their own fears, just like you once did.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like if this video resonated with you. Thank you for being with us and for listening till the end. There's so much more here that we hope will inspire and motivate you. With gratitude, until next time.